Today we will be reviewing Daf Yud Amud Bet, 10B in Chullin. Today's shir is in memory of Eliezer ben Cheskel Lev, whose yurtzeit is actually today. That is Mr. Stolberg. I want to go over what we did at the end last week in terms of the Gemara. Our goal is to get to an ending point because next week there will not be shir. Will be another program up north instead, and I actually will be out of town. So, let's start. We're going to go at Yud Amud Bet. V'hilchasa. Let's go over the V'hilchasa again in the Gemara, which again we saw, and I want to use that as a running point. So you will recall V'hilchasa kivate. Everyone there? The Rav Huna kishel shiber ba'etzem. V'hilchasa kivate. The Rav Chizda kishel shiber ba'etzem. So we said last week that the halacha is established, meaning if a person does shchita, and there's no breaking of the bone, and they look at the knife after they've done shchita, and they see there's a pagam in the knife, we say the halacha is like Rav Huna, and we're going to actually usher the animal, and we're going to say that what happened, we're going to say that it was the neck, it was the or that made the pagam. Right? That's shor ba'etzem. If a person, after he does shchita, is shiber ba'etzem, smashes bones, then we're going to say, no. Etzem is vadai, the or is safek, and safek motzi midei vadai, and will be tola on the etzem. So, kishishiber ba'etzem, then you look at your knife, and only after you smash that bone do you then see a nick, a pagam in your knife. You have reusa in the knife, and you're going to argue that chances are it was done by the etzem, and therefore you can eat the meat. Last week we said about a safek and a vadai. So if you take a look at Rashi, I just want to clarify a point. Michde mitla talinan. Okay, actually, when we get there inside, maybe we'll see that Rashi. It's a very, very important Rashi. When we get there inside, we'll actually read it. Okay, so last week we also mentioned about what type of etzem does it have to be. How about a mafrekes? What about the esophagus bone? And according to we saw right, the halacha is no. Here's the problem: when it comes to actually breaking the mafrekes, it might be considered a softer bone. It's not considered a real bone, and that's what we saw last week in the Shulchan Aruch. Nicking, even smashing the mafrekes might not be sufficient to argue that it's a vadai shiber. A regular bone, yes, but it's a softer bone, and therefore, if you go all the way through and you hit it, we're still going to perhaps. The halacha is we can't be told that the nick happened because of it. And we're going to be machmer and not eat from the animal. Okay? Let's read on together. So here we go. Michlal de Rav Chizda. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fourth word. Michlal de Rav Chizda. Okay. Av agav de lo shiber ba'etzem. So here we go. According to Rav Chizda, what are we going to say now? Shilo de lo shiber ba'etzem. Ela b'mai ifkim. So we have a problem. According to Rav Chizda says you shecht an animal, and you see after you shecht an animal, there's a nick in the knife. According to Rav Chizda, no problem, it's okay. Why? Shema be'etzem nifkama. But the Gemara then says, I don't understand something. If you know you're not shover and etzem, according to you, Mr. Rav Chizda, how are you going to tell me there's a pagam here? Because if you recall, what's the language? Flip the page back for a second. The language is itmar. Remember by those two dots? Hashochet betzakin v'nimtze peguma. Hamaravuna, even if you smash bones all day long, it's no good. Says Rav Chizda, Keshera. Why? Shema be'etzem nifkama. But our Gemara is saying a case, okay, Rav Chizda, what about if you did not shiber ba'etzem? I know he wasn't shover in etzem. How are you going to tell me there was a nick? Okay, so what are the possibilities, gentlemen? If you do, according to Rav Chizda, you do shchita, and you see there's a pagam in your knife. Where did it come from, according to Rav Chizda, if you know you didn't smash a bone?
You check the knife before?
You have to check the knife before. That we say you have to check. Always have to check the knife before. So then where did it come from, this nick? According to Rav Huna, it's not a problem, because I can argue what? Shema, or nifkama. But according to Rav Chizda, if it's not Shema or Nifkama, where did it come from? Okay? Good question. What's the Gemara answer? Ela b'ma yifgim. Where did it get its nick from? Maybe we're going to say Ema be'etzem de mafrekes yifgim. Maybe it came from the mafrekes. Maybe it came from, what's mafrekes in English? Maybe it came from the...
What is it? Neck bone.
Neck bone. So the esophagus? What's the bone after the kind and the veshet?
It'd be vertebrae.
The vertebrae?
Yeah.
The vertebrae. They came from the vertebrae. Maybe it came from the vertebrae. Remember, and we had a whole suffix. Is this mafrekes? Is it pogim or not? Right? But where would it have come from? Maybe you want to tell me it came from the mafrekes. Maybe it came from, right? Remember that picture that we showed a couple weeks ago? What stuff was that on? Remember, there's a great picture that we had in here. Oh, here it is. Right? Here's our picture in our animal. We see here, you're cutting the kana. The kana is a little bit larger. That's the esophagus. Then you're cutting the windpipe, which is a little bit thinner, which is the veshet. And then if you continue going through, what do you hit? You hit the mafrekes, which is the vertebrae. So if you go all the way through, that's where you're going to end up hitting. But that's fine if I hit an etzem. What if I know I don't hit an etzem? So what does the Gemara then say? How is Rav Chizda going to permit this animal? Be'etzem mafrekes ifkim. What he's going to say, I'll tell you what. Maybe it hit the mafrekes. Now, stop. Do we know for a fact that he hit it? We're not sure if he hit it.
Can you be certain whether you hit that part or not?
Okay, what do you mean? Why are you asking that question?
Well, cutting through, incidental contact can happen. It's not that hard of a bone that you feel.
Are there any other explanations you can give?
Question, right,
For a pizza?
can you get a nick from kind of in the vesha?
Can you get it? If you're going to argue that, can you get a nick from the hide?
Again, according to Rav Huna, or Nifkama.
Right.
I can. According to Rav Chizda, so anything else that potentially can cause damage to my knife. Because he can't say or.
I would imagine the bone is harder than the skin, even if it's still a softer bone.
Yeah, I imagine so. So we're going to have to say, according to Rav Chizda, that it's every time you shecht, is there always a suffix that you hit your mafrekes? Because of the close proximity? So read Rashi. Rashi says, Betzem mafrekes. Here we go. Actually, go Michal Rav Chizda, Afilu Shloshi Bar Betzem. Third line in Rashi. Lachar Shchita Machshir. He permits it after Shchita. Why? That it must be, so this is how I explained it, it must be, what are we talking about, a case where Rav Chizda is saying, you did not hit a knife, yet he mutters it. So what is the Gemara then saying? Maybe it hit Be'etzem Mafrekes. Rashi. Lachar Shechita, Shinaga Be'etzem Hatzavar. Vehi HaMafrekes. By the way, what's Mafrekes? Why is Mafrekes called Mafrekes? So what's the root word of Mafrekes in Hebrew? Perek. Why is it called Perek? Because your vertebrae has prakim. It has different parts to it, components to it. That's why it's called Mafrekes. As it quotes a pasuk in Shmuel, find Tishiber Mafrekes. Velos viralan kavate lemitle lekula. He does not hold to establish the following: the make a when to hahi denaga be'etzen de mafrekas lo pagma lasaking tfei meor. Meaning, maybe one could argue the following: if I take a knife, which is more likely to cause damage to my knife? Is it the or is it the mafrekas? Right? If I were to shecht 100 times, right? Statistically, is the or going to cause more damage? So, says what Rashi is saying here, perhaps according to the Gemara is saying, I don't understand. It's just an etzem mafrekas. You're going to tell me, Rav Chizda, that the etzem of mafrekas is more likely to cause damage than the or? Or less likely? Meaning, the etzem mafrekas is also soft. The or is also soft. So, why are you telling me that one is more likely to cause damage than the other? And the Gemara then says, no, it must be the etzem mafrekas is harder, and it is possible that when you shecht, you're going to hit it. Why? So we've said this before, when you're involved in shchita, it's hard to see what's going on, right? There's blood, there's heat, there's time, there's schwitz, but you're working hard. And as we saw from that picture, there's a very small distance between the two. So it must be that according to Rav Chisda, every time you do shchita, safek if you're mafrekas or not. And he says that safek, by the way, this is a big deal. The safek of hitting the mafrekas trumps the vada going through or. Meaning, because he has to say that. Because if he doesn't say that, then how could he permit it? You follow? He has to argue that when you do shchita, maybe I hit a mafrekas, but the mafrekas is so much more likely to nick my knife, even though it's a safek hit the mafrekas, that still I could be tole on that versus vadai or. Because my vadai or for Rav Chisda is still not sufficient to give a pagam. Because if it would be, then my knife would be in trouble. And that's Rav Huna's opinion. So that's the only way to understand what the Gemara is trying to say here, is according to Rav Chisda, when you shecht, every single time you shecht, it involves some type of safek to hit the mafrekas, and safek hitting a mafrekas, I can be tola on, I could hang my hat onto it, even though I have a vadai going through or. Yet, meaning for Rav Chisda, going through the or is so unlikely to cause damage to my knife. I'm willing to say that it was the mafrekas or safek mafrekas. We'll try it. Right? So far, that's one way to understand it. I don't see unless there's anyone else has another way of understanding it. Rav Chisda? No, I think that's the only way to understand it. Okay. Let's go on. Now, listen to this. Okay. Now, we're going to demonstrate the power of these two opinions. Here we go. Have uvda. Here's the case. V'tarav Rav Yosef ad Talesar. There's a situation, and they made treif, meaning they declared that all these animals were no good. How many? Ad Talesar chiyusei. 13 animals. So here's the guy, and what did he do? The situation was, Rav Yosef decided he made treif to lesar chivasa. He made treif 13 of these animals. Why? Here we go. What's the assumption? Why would he make treif 13 animals? What did we fail to do between each time?
Check for pogum.
We didn't check if the knife was pogum. After 13 animals that he shechted, he looks at the knife and he goes, oh my goodness, my knife's no good. When was the last time I checked my knife? Before I started. I'm taking my 13 animals and saying, no good. So Gemara asks, who is this according to? Rav Huna or Rav Chisda? So without looking at the next part of the Gemara, if you hear that statement, what would you assume? Is that Rav Huna or Rav Chisda?
Does it say how many animals he slaughtered?
Ooh.
Well, even the first one isn't okay.
According to
this case, isn't it?
Doesn't say how many he slaughtered.
Okay. Rav Huna would say that there's no good. Shimi wants to imply. Okay, interesting language of the Gemara. Very good. Shimi's picking up on this very language. The Gemara is not saying that he had 13 animals and he shechted all 13 and all 13 were no good. The Gemara says he postled 13 animals. Well, does that mean there were 14? Right? Okay, good. Let's see what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, let me explain the case. By the way, why is the Gemara doing this? This is very important. When we say the Hilchas HaKivaseh, we want to show you that, yes, let's take a look how later generations implemented the halacha. So now, the rule is when the Gemara brings a Maaseh, it's coming to fortify an argument that was said earlier. So if we say that people hold this way, and it is practical, and it is actually implemented, then that is a great establishment of halacha, because this is what people do. Okay, that's an important klal in Shas. When you see they're talking about different cases that are being implemented, that means tachlis, that's what they hold by. Okay. Let's go on. So here we go. So the Gemara asks, come on. Ki Rav Huna va'afilu b'kamaisei. Are we going to see holds like Rav Huna, and even the first one is no good, meaning he shechted 13 and all 13 were no good? No, maybe it's Rav Chisda. V'levar mekamaisei. And maybe the first one was okay, and the rest were not okay. Now,
I was going to say, like, Rashi already says that, like, he didn't check between each one. So, like, how do you...
Okay, Rashi says, Shlo badak ben zo lezo, v'lachar shechitat kulam nimset peguma. So yes, Rashi says he didn't check between each one.
And then, and then he went back and puzzled all of them, right?
Oh, so then all it says we went back.
He puzzled 13.
He puzzled 13. So does that
What
mean?
if he slaughtered 14?
Well, if he slaughtered 27? No, yeah, right. No. The question is how many did he shecht? And then the Gemara is even going to say, well, even though he puzzled 13, the first one he really said was okay, which is hard to imagine. What? What do you say?
So what if he shechted 12?
Right.
So Rashi says Shechitas Kulan, that he slaughtered all of them. Right.
Yeah, so again, he shechted all of them. And the question is, what did he do? So if there were 14, he shechted all of them. And he only puzzled 13. If there were 13 and he shechted all of them, and he puzzled all 13. Or, the Gemara is even going to say, maybe when the Gemara said he puzzled 13, it was only puzzled 12. It's unclear exactly how many there were. But there's enough of an opening to say that we could even discuss as Machogas and Rav Chisda in the case of Rav Yosef. So what Rav Yosef did is somewhat ambiguous, and who he holds like is ambiguous. So the Gemara is going to try to align what's his opinion. Because again, what bothers the Gemara is if we hold that he's lo shiber bat tzamos, if he doesn't break bones in between, we should hold like Rav Huna, and all of them should be no good. Right? So to some extent, that's what the Gemara wants to say, because that's what the halacha kvasa is. We establish the halacha, let's actually prove that. It's not good to establish halacha and then see someone do something else. That's not very helpful. So, says Rav Yosef, at leisar, who's he hold like? Rav Huna, for the book of I say, look, Rav Chisda with sar kamas. Here we go. So that would be the first. If he buys ema, you could say no. There's another way of explaining this case. La'olam ki Rav Huna. Maybe we're really going to say holds like Rav Huna. Why? After all, listen to this. Ti'i ki Rav Chisda michte mislot linan. If we hold like Rav Chisda, we're going to hold the following. Mimai de be'etzem de mafrakas kamaisa yifkim. Dilma be'etzem mafrakas besraisa yifkim. Ha! The Gemara then says, wait a second, time out. Unapproved do this hasi Rav Huna. This is the Ibais Ema. This is a hard Ibais Ema. I want you to tell me what the Gemara now is saying. Who's to say, according to Rav Chisda, that it was because remember, what do we say about Rav Chisda? What caused the nick if not the or? And it's not Shiber Bat Samos. It's the Mafrekas, right? So if it's the Mafreket, says the Gemara, wait a second, who's to say that it's the Mafreket of the first animal? Maybe it's the Mafreket of the last animal, in which case all of them should be good. Here's a proof that he must hold like Rav Huna.
I agree with that.
What is this new understanding of the Gemara that we didn't have before? Again, the Gemara says, for sure it's like Rav Huna. Because if this was Rav Chisda, maybe Rav Chisda holds that when you shecht, it was the mafreket of the last animal, and since it was the mafreket of the last animal, all of them were good. Since we see that Rav Yosef made them trave, must be like Rav Huna.
Wait, but how can you just say that it was the last animal?
Okay, so what now is the Gemara saying about Rav Chisda that it's different than before?
The probability of each animal is the same. It's not a more likely case. Rav Chisda is saying it's more likely you cut it on the bone than the hide. But here you're arguing the probability is the same on all of them, so you have to assume the first probability.
No, so I agree with you. That's what we said originally. Now the Gemara brings it Ibais Ema to say, no, maybe I'm going to prove to you another way to say there's Rav Huna. Definitively. Because if it would be Rav Chisda, he would actually allow the animals. Why? Because who's to say the pagam, who's to say the nick on the knife was caused by the first animal? Maybe it was caused by the last animal. Since Rav Yosef made them all trave, must be Rav Huna.
Right, but who's to say it wasn't the first animal?
Again, I agree with you. But the Gemara is saying but the Gemara is not assuming that.
Again, that doesn't follow Rav Chisda's logic.
Again. The Gemara has a different understanding. Okay, so now, according to this, what is Rav Chisda's logic? It can't be what we said before. So what then is this Ibais Ema analyzing and telling us about Rav Chisda? It has to be different than what we said before. What we said before was, when you shecht an animal, you hit the mafreket. But fine. The Gemara here is saying, Rav Chisda, maybe, I'm going to prove to you why this is Rav Huna. You know why this is Rav Huna? Because if it was Rav Chisda, He would allow the animals. You know why? Because he holds that maybe hit the mafreket. Yeah, but which mafreket? May hit the last mafreket? If hit the last mafreket, they should all be permissible. Oh, since Rav Yosef made them all treif, it's Rav Huna. So what is the understanding here of Rav Chisda now?
So like every single time is a suffix, whether or not you hit the mafreket.
And therefore, why am I singing? Why am I singing it's the last one?
Because I don't know. You can assume they're kosher. That all the other ones were kosher and like.
What? Okay. Why can I assume they're kosher?
You didn't see
Because
signs of
you didn't see that the knife was broken.
I didn't look.
Huh?
I didn't look that the knife was broken. Lo badak ben
You also
zolazo,
likely didn't
says
see any
BJ and
signs
Rashi.
of like a pugum in the when you were cutting, because if there was a pugum in the knife and you cut, you would probably see it in the animal.
It's like Schrodinger's cat. Like Schrodinger's cat we I think before.
Right, that's the last one. Right.
Yeah.
How else do we? Why is Rav Chisda so willing to jump to the last one? Let's read Rashi. Now we're ready for Rashi. Michte mitla talinan. Deha vada negiat sakin b'mafreket lo pagma tfei me'or. Since Rashi says, according to Rav Chisda, if I shech the animals, the sakin hin mafreket is not causing damage more than skin. After all, shaharei eno makalav b'koach. I'm not cutting with force. I'm doing seesawing back and forth. I'm shechting. I'm not hacking. Afilu hache. Here we go. Tlei beit lekula. I am always, and this is what we have to say, Rav Chisda is not just telling a freket and a mafreket. According to this understanding, Rav Chisda always is mekel. Meaning, why should I be machmir and say it was the first animal that causes the dent? I don't have any knowledge. Since it's so unlikely to happen, why am I saying that it's unlikely to happen and it happened in the first animal? I'm going to say it's so unlikely to happen. I have a dent, so I had to say it happened. So I'll say it happened at the last possible moment. So he's told what's called tole lameko. Because the rationale is, it's so unlikely to happen. But I see there's a dent in my knife, so I have no choice to say that it happened. So Rav Chisda's opinion is not that it hit the mafreket. It's that it's so unlikely to happen, I am going to take the most lenient opinion possible since it's so unlikely to happen. But I have to say it happened because he had a dent in my knife, and I'll be tola on the last one. Why? That is called tole balukula. He's tola to be meko. Right? He's forced to say there was a dent. Yeah, he sees it in his knife. So why should you be machmir and say it was in the first one? And therefore you'd pass all the animals but the first one. This ibais ema is in fact telling us that I'm going to pass none of them. Because I'm going to be tola balahakel that the actual dent happened at the very last second. Thank you. And the last animals. Okay? Let's read on. Hilchach. Kishachat behemot tuva. When a guy shechs many animals, Tali nam Rav Chisda b'mafreket b'sraise umachshir lehu. Rav Chisda is going to say it was the last possible animal that got nicked. Wow, beautiful. Thank you.
He's saying that there's such a small possibility of it hitting the mafreket, but
No, again. Hitting the mafreket and having the mafreket
right
dent my knife.
But that's still even greater than having the or dent your knife?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm total lahaka. I mean, I will take the most lenient position possible, which is what? That very last animal. That's what's called tali balahaka. That's what he says here. Kishacha behematuva. I'm shachting many animals. Tali nami Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda is tola. He's assuming with the mafreket of the basraisi, the last one. And he makes every single one kosher. That is the ibais ema. So the first, to be fair, close the door. The first opinion was only the first one Rav Chisda will say is okay. The rest are not okay because it happened on that first one. The ibais ema is saying he's so makel. He said, "Well, I understand why I be told on the first one. I'm going to be told on the very last possibility possible. That's the last one." Because it's so, that's what Ezra was saying, it's so unlikely to happen. Because unlike it happened the first time, but I have to say it happened because I have a nick here. I'll tell you about the Why are you assuming the first one? You're a pessimist. I'm going to say it happened, the last one. That's the Baisema. Now, therefore, what do we see here? Rav Yosef held like Rav Huna. Because what does Rav Huna hold? It happened in the Or, the first one. Or shall we say this? I don't have to say it was. Do I have to say it was Vaida, the first one? This is actually worthwhile explaining for a second. Even according to Rav Huna, I don't have to say. Is Rav Huna willing to put a wager on the odds are, right? It's Super Bowl day, so on the odds. Is Rav Huna willing to wager that it happened that first one? No. But what's the problem? He says, listen, I have a chazaka here that this animal is no good. How do I know?
The knife is no.
I have a chazaka that the knife is no good. But again, what do I need to make this animal a kosher animal? It's eno zavuach, it's ever minachai, it's not kosher to eat this way. I shecht it, but now I have a problem because my knife has a reusa. My knife has a pagam in it. In order for me to say, no, the shechita is good, when I have a reusa, when I have something negative staring me in the face, I need to be very certain. And I can't be very certain. Why? Because maybe my knife was dented from that first animal by the skin. And therefore, can I say definitively? No. Maybe it happened in the sixth one. Maybe the first five are really okay. But the problem is, the moment I include a suffix, a doubt, whatever that doubt is, 1% doubt, 5% doubt, 20% doubt, it's irrelevant. The moment I have a doubt, it's not enough to remove the vadai, this animal is no good. I need to be certain. I can't be certain because I have a reusa in my knife, or can cause damage. Maybe it was the first one, maybe it was the last one. I don't know. But since I don't know and I can't prove it, I have to say that I don't have enough validity, I don't have enough proof to machshir my animal. Because we're playing in the world of Doraisas, we're playing in Chazaka, that it's no good, and I have, right?
If that's what Rav Huna is saying, would Rav Chisda respond by saying, like, you're right, it's like ain't suffix motzi midei, but like right now you have a chazaka that it's
no good,
basul, and you need. So what he would say is basically that there's actually not really any suffix at all that the mafreket can be pogam. Mafreket's not pogam. Now we've seen that somehow a pagam happened. We say, okay, it was very obscure, but it's not even under the category of suffix. And because it's such an obscure case, we have no reason to say that it happened in one of the first animals.
Correct.
Because there's no reason, like...
I don't have enough of a reason to assume that it happened with the or, by the mafrekas, nothing.
Right.
But I have no choice. I have to say it happened. After I see it, put my knife. So I'll do the last one. And what would he say about the first one's no good? He would say, listen, it could happen in the mafrekas. It's possible. I can't be certain, so I gotta say the last 12 or the last 13 were no good. But the first one is fine. Why isn't the first one okay? So the question is, where do you put your... Because remember, where you need to be able to remove the chazaka that your animal is no good. So how much information do you need to remove it? You can't be 100% certain. But for Rav Chisda, it's enough to say, I'm so not interested in hedging my bets on this or, because it's so unlikely, I'm going to put it in the mafrekas. So machlokes is, the mafrekas are the first one, or can I really be mako and say, no, it's so unlikely, you can go down to the last one. Totally balahakal. So the first opinion is, he's not necessarily totally balahakal. First opinion maybe would say that he's arguing, you know what it's all about? It's all about a situation of, maybe the mafrekas caused the damage, I don't know, the first one will be okay, but the rest, I can't be certain, and therefore the rest are no good. As opposed to the second opinion, which is the Ibais Eba, Rav Chisda is like, I'm totally balahakal. I'm Mako in the first one, and the second one, and the third one. But by the last one, I can't be Mako anymore, because I see this at the end of my knife. Last one's no good. Okay, let's go on. Okay. My desmond vergus goes if good. Dilma desmond vergus. Amar le Ravacha, Berei de Rava, le Ravashi, Rav Kahana, okay, this is a new statement. Rav Kahana mitzrich di kusa bin kol chada v'chada. Here's a statement by Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana is saying, you must check your knife between each shchita. Now, hold on a second. Gentlemen, is this a biblical obligation? Is this a rabbinic obligation? Is this good advice? What would you say? Obligatory, not obligatory, good advice, not good advice? What do you think? Good advice. So why is Rav Kahana checking between each one?
So you don't end up with a situation like
So you don't have a situation here. So again, you don't have to do it, but should you not do it?
Because if it was required, you'd have a lot of questions about this right now.
If it was required, no, again.
Yeah.
So Rav Kahana is saying, I check my knife in between each time. So why? Because look what happened to Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef did shchita, and what happened to him? Rav Yosef just lost a lot of animals. So Rav Kahana is saying, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be responsible, and I check each time. It's not necessarily an obligatory thing. Okay, take a look at this. Let's read on. Why is he doing it? Come on! Kiravuna, v'lemisel kamaite, lo. Kirav chizda v'lachshure betraite. Are we saying that this opinion is according to Ravuna? In order so that what would end up happening? So let's play this through. According to Rav Acha Braid Rav Ashi, that Rav Kahana had this rule that what? He would make everyone do a bedika between each and every single one. What's the rationale behind it? Is he holding like Rav Huna or Rav Chizda? Why? I mean, can we conclude from here that he holds like Rav Huna or Rav Chizda? Is this a proof Rav Huna or Rav Chizda who he holds by? So not necessarily. Why? Because maybe he holds like Rav Huna, and he's worried about what? That choshesh for the or, and therefore he doesn't want lemilsel kamaite. He doesn't want to find a dented knife. The answer Gemara says, no, not necessarily. Maybe he holds like Rav Chizda, lachshuri batraite. And if you were to find a dent in it, what would he do? He'd be able to validate even that first one. So, by the way, I want to repeat that. Why is it that Rav Kahana wanted to check all of his knives after each shchita? Is this a proof for Rav Huna or Rav Chizda? Who do you hold like? Have me to say Rav Huna, because why? Why would you check it after the first one? It makes sense if it's like Rav Huna. Why is it like Rav Huna? Because maybe Ba'or Nifkama. Since Ba'or Nifkama might happen, I better check between each time. But you could argue, wait a second. No, it's like Rav Chizda. Now listen to the language of the Gemara. Maybe it's like Rav Chizda, and what do you want to do? Lachshure batraita.
How can you do that then?
What is Lachshure batraita?
The last one.
You want to? But that you want to save the last, not last one, last ones. That's plural, but Raita is plural. What's the advantage of that? It appears, and all the Rishonim say, we see from here that the Gemara is dismissing the Ibai Tema. Because if it wasn't dismissing the Ibai Tema, we would have said, I only want to save the last one. The fact that Gemara says, I want to save the last ones, it's dismissing the Ibai Dema. It's only go according to the first opinion, meaning that even Rav Chizda would not allow the last batch. Right? The Ibai Dema, which said Rav Chizda would allow all of them, that we don't go according to that Ibai Dema. We go according to that first opinion, which said that Rav Huna would not allow the first one. Rav Chizda would allow the first ones, but they all would agree that the rest would be no good. So that and this statement by Rav Kahana appears to be, the Gemara is saying, we don't hold the Ibai Tema. The Machlok between Rav Huna and Rav Chizda is only in the first one, and therefore by Shchita, we're not Tola Lahakel. We don't necessarily go the lenient way by Shchita. What do we do instead? We hold like that first opinion by Rav Chizda, that maybe the Mafreket dented it, and therefore anything that happens afterwards is no good, even according to Rav Chizda. Therefore, what does Rav Kahana say? I check between each one. Why do I check between each one? Because Rav Kahana maybe holds like Rav Chizda, and therefore I want to make sure that all the other ones would be okay. Because maybe that first one will dent my knife because of the mafreket, and therefore he parcels all of them. Check in between each one, and you avoid it. So this statement in the Gemara, but why does Rav Kahana want you to check your knife each time, is not necessarily a proof for Rav Huna Rav Chizda, but it is a proof to argue that Rav Chizda, the Maskana, the Gemara, is not always Mako in every way possible. It's just the first time he says, when there's a dent, I'm not going to say it's or, I'm saying it might be the Mafreket. I don't know if it was a Mafreket. Since I have a doubt by the Mafreket, the rest are no good. Because I'm involved in a suffix. And involved in a suffix, that's not enough to remove a vadai that this is a wonderful treif animal that's roaming the streets.
Would Rav Chisda still puzzle all that?
And Rav Chizda then would puzzle the rest. Because maybe it was dented after the first one.
This is a counter-argument that Rav Yosef holds like Rav.
No, this we can't prove.
No, this is a counter-argument that Rav Yosef definitively holds like Rav Huna. Because they previously tried to claim that.
So they tried to say maybe... So this is Rav Kahana with why are you checking knives every time? So yeah, but it appears he holds like Rav Yosef. Depends.
The previous part said Rav Yosef holds like Rav
Huna.
Seems to be very sure of it.
And they seem to be very sure.
And this is a counterpoint to that, correct?
Yeah, this seems to argue that we are unclear who we hold. No. This is not connected. This is Rav Kahana now. Why does Rav Kahana want you to check a knife every time?
Because this is countering the point that they used to prove Rav Yosef holding like Rav Huna. To argue that Rav Yosef held like Rav Huna, they argued that Rav Chisda would permit all of them.
So Rav Yosef, yeah, right. But we dismissed the Ibai Dema.
That's what's dismissing that argument, correct? That he would permit all of them.
So I think there are two ways. We had a case of Rav Yosef who who made all the animals not good. Right. We don't know if that's according to Rav Huna Rav Chizda. That we weren't sure.
So then they came with a proof against Rav Chisda that made it seem like it had to be Rav Huna.
So
that's when he said that he would permit all of them. Because if he permits all of them, then Rav Yosef can't hold like Rav Chisda.
Correct.
This is arguing against that.
Because you check the knife every time?
Because you're saying that even Rav Chisda doesn't hold that he'd permit all of them.
So that means I'm dismissing the Ibai Dema. I'm dismissing I'm dismissing the Ibai Dema. I'm not, just be careful, it's a good question.
No,
I'm not dismissing.
We're not saying Rav Yosef holds like Rav.
Yes, right.
We're saying we still don't know.
Yes, we still don't. Correct. Yeah. Correct. Yes. I'm dismissing the Ibai Dema. All this is doing is dismissing the Ibai Dema. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Okay, let's continue because I want to get to the end of this sugya before reading week. So let's go on. Ihachi, if this is so, tibai nami b'dikat chacham. If this is so, why don't we require a b'dikat chacham? Okay, this is very important. This is a very important principle. What is a b'dikat chacham? I gotta do this Rashi too. I'm going to tell you it's outside. I'm going to say it in Rashi after. The Gemara says on Daf Yud Zayin that you must show your knife to Chacham Ha'ir. Chacham Ha'ir. The language of the Gemara is...
When you showed them?
Oh, that's a very good question.
Every time you want to check it out.
Okay, so do you have to run every time to the Rebbe?
Maybe it's just an expert.
Maybe...
He's to run to Benjamin and Adam.
Here we go.
Between every year.
Here. Amar Rav Chizda. Listen to this. The Gemara says, Minayin lebedikat sakin. No. Rav Yochanan lo amru loharat sakin lechacham ela mipnei kvodo shel chacham. Meaning, why is it that we make the guy show his knife to the Chacham Ha'ir? Only... Is it a halachic requirement? Says the Gemara, it's only because of kvodo shel chacham. When you hear the words kvodo shel chacham, what does that mean to you? What's kavod? Can I see your knife? Am I doing it because I don't trust you? I'm doing it because kvodo shel chacham. What does that mean, kvodo shel chacham?
It doesn't actually have anything to do with shchita.
It has to do with kavod. So what might be the kavod? The chief rabbi comes around. and you're a shochet, and you have your shechita knife, it is considered kavod shel chacham to show him the shechita knife. Why?
Maybe he wants to see a knife.
Why? What is it a sign of? Come on, what's it a sign of? Humility. You want to be kavod. He's the chief rabbi. You show him your knife. Is he questioning your shechita? No. That's very important. So that's, you appreciate the answer to the Gemara.
So is it me'akev?
No, it's kavod shel chacham. Very important. Kavod shel chacham means it's for honor. It's not me'akev. It's the proper, it's etiquette. It's rabbinic etiquette. So that's what the Gemara now says. Now you'll appreciate this line. So, ihachi tabay nami b'diger chacham. If that's true, we should require every single time you do shechita. I mean, Rav Kahana says the knife was checked after each time. Does that mean it was checked by a Talmud Chacham? No. We trust you. Why do we trust you? What's that based on? It's a very important principle which we're going to have to get into in a little more detail after. Eid echad neman b'isurin. We have a principle, gentlemen. Very important principle. Where it comes from, what's its source, when do we use it? That is going to require more investigation. But here's a halachic principle. Eid echad. We trust in Eid echad for Isser. When do we need two Eidim for?
Anything else?
Example. Give me two examples of what we need two Eidim for.
Marriage.
So why we need two Eidim for marriage? Because Eid echad neman b'isurin. When marriage is an example of what? When do we need two witnesses? For what? For what purpose do we need two witnesses? Okay, Rashi. Eid echad neman b'isurin. Techo yachid v'yachid he'eminto Torah. We trust you. The Torah trusts you. How do we know this? V'zavachta v'yibkorcha mitzonecha v'shachat et ben habakar v'achle kohanim al yado. You do shchita. You bring your food to the kohanim, and the kohanim eat it. V'lo hizkiko lahamid edim adavar. We don't make two edim stand next to you when you do shchita and you give it to the kohanim. If you go to kohen and say I shechted it properly, Eid echad is neman b'isurin. You don't have to ask your mom, Mom, is this food kosher? Bring me testimony. Your mother says it's kosher, Eid echad neman b'isurin. V'lo hitzrichu Torah edim. Here we go. The Torah only demands witnesses for when? Ella, long line there. The onesh mamon. If you want to extract money from somebody, Eid echad is not sufficient. You need two edim. Or mitas based in. If you want to kill somebody, you need two edim. Or a rayot. Or for a rayot. That's why you need two edim for wedding. What?
Things between people, you need 280.
So again, not between people, because my kosher food is between people too. If I want to extract money, I cannot extract money from you without two
But
edim.
you're taking something from someone where, obviously you don't want to make someone eat treif, but that's still between you and God, not between you and another person.
Why, if I give you tray food, you're pretty mad at me. In fact, if I give you tray food, you might.
No, but that's between that
It's
person.
not a comprehensive list anyway. Like, what about Kiddush HaChodesh? You need two witnesses for that? I mean, or if she doesn't mention that.
Okay, why did you do this for Kiddush HaChodesh? Is that considered Eid echad neman b'isurin? Because anytime you want to establish something, no, but I want to establish is, if I want to Kiddush HaChodesh, why do you need two witnesses? I think that's actually a Kiddush in the Mikra. Why do you need two witnesses for Kiddush HaChodesh? Yeah, how do I know this? Because it's a pasuk that says a tavara. Remember, it's a pasuk. That,
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's an exclusion. Otherwise,
Oh,
you might not need it. Special case. Yeah. But generally, you wouldn't need it. Okay, we're running out of time, and I'm like two. I want to give me two more lines, and then we're going to stop. Ihachi mikar namilo. If that's true. If Eid echad is neman b'isurin, why am I sure? Why did Rav Kahana need you to check the knife every time? Why did Rav Kahana need to show it to the Talmud Chacham? Hemar Rabbi Yochanan lo amalad sakin l'chacham ela b'bnei kvodosh chacham. Period. Meaning, why is it that you're showing the knife to Chacham? Not because you have to do it. Eid echad neman b'isurin. I trust you. You're a shochet. I trust you. I don't need to show my knife to the Rosh Rav Ha'ir. Why am I doing it? Kvodosh Chacham. Nothing to do with kashrus per se. Why? Because Eid echad neman b'isurin. Now, You have to establish that you know what you're doing. That's a conversation for another time, right? If this is a shochet, and he is muchzak, he knows what he's doing, you don't question his shchita. Oh, why do you then have to show your knife to the Chacham Meir? Not because you need two edim, not because you don't trust him, because kavoda shochacham. And that is in fact the maskana. So, what do we see from here? It appears the Gemara is saying that we're going to hold like Rav Huna when it comes to you don't hit a bone. Rav Chizda will try and fight it out. No, I argue. The Gemara seems to want to push the Rav Huna agenda, we don't smash a bone. That Rav Chizda is only establishing that the first one is no good, and the first one is good, the rest are no good. What's the reason why Rav Kahana established that you have to check your knife every time? Not because you necessarily are obligated to do it, but it'll prevent you from getting into either Rav Huna's issue or Rav Chizda's issue, because either one of them, you have a situation where you're going to treif up 13 animals, which you don't want to get to. Either one would say that. It's only arguing over one animal. So if you have 15 animals, you're talking about 14 good or no good. That's a whole machlokas. Everyone agrees that first machlokas is only over that first animal. Oh, why are you going to show your stocking between each one to save the animals? And you need to show your stocking to check your stocking. Good advice. Oh, and by the way, you should show it to Chacham Ha'ir. You need to? You don't need to. Why do you do it? So why are you showing it to the Chacham Ha'ir? You have to show him because of kavoda shechacham. And that's the maskana. Okay? Where do we get echad neman bisurin from? What's this whole chacham ha'ir? How do we establish and trust the shochet or not? All that needs to be investigated a little bit more. And Bezrat Hashem will do so in a couple of weeks. Just a reminder that today's shir was in memory of Eliezer ben Cheskel Lev. Have a wonderful day.